Hello friends, I'm the Otter. Today we're going to do the most neglected service in the automotive industry. The battery and charging system in your car is arguably the most important because it will not run without electricity and it also will not start. So you may seem like this is a silly repair or service, but let me tell you, when it's the middle of the night and your car turns off on the freeway, it's not silly anymore. Take a look at the battery on this 1997 Toyota 4Runner. So it looks pretty decent and I've definitely seen worse. But the most important thing about your battery is that it is secure inside of your car. So this one is secured with a 2x4 and this is not a safe thing to do. Because if this battery slides around, it could potentially make a fire. Jumping into these battery terminals, they definitely need some love. Money is tight in 2024, so I'm going to be using a whole bunch of affordable Amazon componentry, and if it does work out, I'll leave it in the description. If it doesn't, it will not be there. So we're going to need some battery terminals, a hold down, wire brush, and definitely some gloves. Anytime you remove the battery terminals, you run the risk of having other problems happen. Like the car may not idle correctly and may need a relearn or a throttle blade cleaning if it's a Toyota. The battery terminal on this truck is completely rotted away, so it needs to come off the car. Depending on the severity of your battery terminals, you may be able to leave them in place and just scratch the terminals. You need to reestablish a good connection between the car's wires and the battery terminal. So these ones are heavily corroded with battery acid, so make sure you wear gloves. Any single service in this video will help your charging and starting system, but I'm going to go super deep and do whichever one you feel like you can accomplish. This is some boutique battery acid cleaner, but any battery acid cleaner will do the job. Once the battery and the tray is removed, you want to spray this down because the battery acid is super corrosive and is already rotting the frame out on this car. So you're going to let this sit for a while and make sure you wear some gloves and have some disposable towels. Wiping up all that battery acid will save your car's frame. The corrosion level underneath the battery tray wasn't particularly bad because this one hadn't gone too far. I've seen them so bad you have to basically go in there and grind off rust for like 20 minutes and then respray paint it. So this is a Toyota and they do come with these little battery trays. So we need to clean off this battery tray the same as we did the car. So it's a good idea to replace this tray if it's worn out, bent like mine is, but this is the budget build, so we're just going to be doing repairs and rebuilds on this truck whenever possible. Do not throw this tray away, regardless if you clean it or not. So it is a pretty important item because it will catch some of the battery acid from going on the metal. As you can see, mine is pretty worn out and bent, but it's better than nothing. The connection points between your car's wires and the battery terminal need to be scratched off with a wire brush regardless of the corrosion level. So this will reestablish a good connection point so your car will start in the middle of the night. These battery terminals are off Amazon. They say they're for a Nissan, but they look like the OEM Toyota ones, so that's why I ordered them. So regardless if the battery terminals are corroded or not, you still need to perform some wire brush scrubbing. And this little red tool I'm using costs like $5. When replacing the battery terminals with the OEM or the Nissan knockoff Amazon version, we need to lace them through this red cover. So this red cover is also a very important step because it will isolate the positive connection to the battery and make it less likely for your car's battery terminals to catch on fire. I'm not joking when I say fire. So if the battery terminal, the positive side, contacts any metal on your car's frame, hood, anything, basically all the ground wires will catch on fire. And then your car will not start and you will have to tow it. You can ask me why I know this. Vitally important that you double, triple check every connection point between your car's wires and the battery terminal. So if you leave anything loose, the car may not start later, 6 months down the road, you never know. You can ask me why I know this as well. So just do the wiggle test and make sure that red cover folds over the positive terminal. Now it is completely isolated in case the battery did fall over. 90% of the cars I work on are missing this red cover. So let's move over to the negative sides because this one's not going to be fun. This style of aftermarket battery terminal is absolute rubbish. So remove these whenever possible. The problem is if your wires are basically frayed out like this, I'm probably going to have to reuse this trash battery terminal. Now this battery didn't look very bad at first glance, but the grounding to the battery was extremely poor. So this could have left me stranded later on down the road. So I don't have the professional tools to crimp and basically do this perfect, so let's do the DIY backyard specialist. The entire grounding system from battery to frame on this truck was pretty bad, so let's see if I can actually save it. The Amazon negative battery terminal is not going to work because it doesn't have a loop-de-doo to bolt into the battery. So we're going to have to reuse the rubbish old ones. And at this point, I'm just peeling back the insulation on the ground wire that goes from the inner fender to the battery. And let's see if we can actually make this work. Doesn't matter if it's a new terminal or reusing the old one, we're going to scratch the connection points to make sure everything is basically transferring electricity. If your negative terminal or negative wire is an absolute mess like this one, you're going to take a wire brush and we're just going to comb these wires back into place while removing any grit and establishing a good connection. The proper repair for this one is basically buy this negative battery terminal and hook it back onto the starter or the alternator wherever this cable goes. But if you're a budget specialist like myself, we're going to twist these wires back into a smaller connection to put them back on the battery terminal. There is zero corrosion on this new to me battery, but I'm still doing the scratch test on the new to me battery. Once the negative or positive wires are all combed out with a wire brush and twisted up, we can put them back on these rubbish style battery terminals. So I absolutely despise these style of battery terminals, but they are a good problem solver for the budget fix. The battery hold down is the most important thing because you don't want the battery to fall down and make a fire. This one costs $45 for the OEM one, so we're going to try the $11 Amazon version. I like to categorize these as eBay parts even though they're from Amazon. Anytime you're using trash, aftermarket, cheap, generic components, you're going to have to do some modifications, so this stuff is not for the light of heart. Finding out why the OEM battery hold down was missing. The bolt that goes into the core support was basically snapped off, so this is a pretty easy repair with a left-handed drill bit to extract that bolt, and you could have kept the OEM version. Installing the battery for about the third time, let's put the battery hold down and check it. So this bolt is definitely way too long. It's going to contact the hood and leave the hole. So you got to cut this down. Like I told you, not for the faint of heart to use generic cheap parts because you do have to modify them. So they do come with a little bit of wing nuts, and I got these pliers. I'm going to tighten it up. The Nissan knockoff battery terminals were pretty impressive. The battery hold down was kind of a nightmare. I had to put it on a slight angle and find some sheet metal to hook it onto. So the negative battery terminal absolutely needed attention on this truck. So I'm feeling a lot more confident. Moving into the advanced course, let's check out the alternator and the starter. So check the belt tension on your alternator, so this one is fairly loose. Before touching any bolts, let's do a visual inspection because this is the most important thing you can do. So my alternator has definitely got quite a bit of corrosion on it. If yours is soaked in oil, it's just a matter of time before it fails. Toyota Denso alternators usually last about 10 years, so typically I just replace them, but this is the 4Runner budget build, so we're doing an inspection on the cord going to the alternator. So I am going to pop off that nut and double check it for corrosion. You'd be absolutely shocked at some of the alternators that I see. Same deal as the battery, we're just going to get in there with a wire brush and make sure the connections are absolutely clean so the voltage coming out of the alternator does not have high resistance. Depending on the car you have, this may not be worth doing, but this one is a 4-cylinder 4Runner, so it's fairly easy. After tightening everything up, you always want to do the wiggle test to make sure nothing is loose. Moving into the back of the alternator, there's an electrical connector going into the alternator, so dielectric grease is your absolute best friend. Fill that connector up and make sure all the safety covers are back on the alternator. Proper belt tension on the alternator will ensure good voltage coming out of it. So in this old school Toyota 4Runner, we loosen up the bolt right here, and then we tighten with this one here. We're going to use our finger to check the belt tension. Now there is a special tool to use. You just want this tight and not too tight. Do not forget to tighten up the lock bolt if you have one of these old school V-belts. So this bolt was actually loose and probably causing this alternator to get looser over time. Visual inspection on the starter tells me this has been replaced fairly recently. So I'm not going to remove the connections off this because it's not really worth the effort. Some people may think that is absolutely overkill, but I can tell you when you're on a long road trip and your car dies, it is not. So this is the budget Toyota 4Runner build, so click this playlist here because there's like 100 more videos to go.